and we develop and facilitate mindfulness health education programs for systems of education and care, where we partner with a range of organizations on advancing equity. And so I just wanted to just simply share this notion of advancing equity, and it's the premise of really moving beyond a DEI or a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens, and how can we really approach and honor, co-create a world where everyone has what they need to thrive, where they live, where they work, where they learn, and where they play. And so how can we customize conditions? How can we be open to what collaborative learning and sharing looks like in the process? So this is just a simple lens into how we approach equity, into the just and fair notion that we all have the right to feel a sense of belonging where we reside. And so I offer this with the simple notion of so much is possible when we trust each other. So much is possible when there is trust that exists between people, between institutions, between the flow of life. But it seems so rare these days that we find spaces where we feel a sense of safety, particularly psychological safety, physical safety even. And so trust is a tremendous resource and asset that if we cultivate it, much is actually possible together. So as we look at this notion of advancing equity, it's really important that we listen to each other and our stories, because our stories and our lived experiences matter so much more than statistics. And we are so much more than statistics. So if we can carve a little bit more space and time to listen to one another, to honor each other and our path, much can come from that. And again, elevating this notion of listening, learning, and sharing, and that sort of rich reciprocity that is possible when we take some time to move from a place of leadership into real learning and humble learning, as well as the ability to listen and share. And so in this marathon of life that we have endless to-dos and mounting responsibilities, the reality is that not all speed is movement, right? Just because we're incredibly expeditious at what we're doing doesn't necessarily mean that we're progressing in a meaningful manner. And so I really like this quote that reminds us that not all speed is movement. And so can we take incremental action? Can we take incremental steps with the power of intention to advance our lives through mindfulness practice with a deliberate focus on creating a world where we all feel like we can belong? And in terms of our organizational work, and I just had the gift of co-facilitating recently with PD in New Mexico, much of our work really is about building and bringing and advancing equity within organizations. And we were working with a network of nonprofit organizations in New Mexico, really looking to build and bridge a more equitable and inclusive community, centering the needs of the communities and those that we're serving. And it seems in these sort of institutions and systems that we are navigating within, it feels quite rare that we feel included, and it feels really equitable. So I think part of this conversation and our time together is really going to be about, honoring and acknowledging the role that we share in making the world a better place than we found it. So what is our responsibility, both individually and collectively, to make the world a better place, whether it be our own homes, our own neighborhoods, the communities that we live in? We're taking time out. One way of thinking about a time in is the practice of mindfulness, and we'll be embarking on a small practice together momentarily. But it's often how I even frame it when we work with children and youth at our organization, as well as adults, that we all need to take a time in to deepen our own understanding, our ability to listen. And sometimes we need to take a time out where we need to be good troublemakers and kind of disrupt what's happening, because I really believe we could no longer sit on the proverbial fence when injustice is flowing all around us. And so what are the conversations we should be leaning into in the moment? What are ways we can elevate our voice with courage and truth and trust? What are the ways we can, hit the pause button in an effort to have really constructive conversations together, to really move the dial and to ensure that we are moving right towards progress together. So as we lean into this practice of what we call at Ivy Child, the equity breath, it's really looking at this premise of using the word breath as a framework, where B stands for breathe, for belonging. R stands for restoration and renewal. E stands for exercising equity. A stands for activating and advocating. T, trusting our path. And H, healing through hope. So I first just want to welcome you all to be seated comfortably. If you wish to stand or move, you're welcome to as well. And you're welcome to just rest your eyes or leave them open. Just honoring what you need in this moment. If you need to stretch, if you need to shift a little bit, that's okay too. Just give yourselves the permission to shift and to get into a comfortable position as we embark on this practice together. And you're welcome to keep your eyes open or closed. So as we begin this practice, let's ground ourselves in deep gratitude. Gratitude for all those who have come before us and for those who have paved the way for us to sit in this moment with a sense of relative safety, whose tireless efforts allow us to be and move within the spaces we navigate each day. Acknowledging the responsibility we also share in making the world a better place than we found it. In this way, we can recognize our own sense of belonging as we take time now at the start of our practice to breathe for belonging. Enjoying each deep breath as you breathe in and breathe out. Honoring and allowing the motion of your mind to gently rest on the motion of your breath. Continuing to breathe. As we inhale, again, breathing with that deep sense and welcoming of belonging. As we take a few breaths to allow us to focus on cultivating belonging, the positive elements of belonging, and our gratitude for all that have made this possible. As we begin to feel a sense of restoration and renewal. Belonging, restoration, and renewal. As we continue to breathe this sense of belonging and renewal, let's prepare ourselves to receive the world with as much positivity and energy as we can. With this in mind, let's take some time to breathe for belonging as well as our collective restoration and renewal, allowing a very welcome pause. As we breathe, focusing on restoration and renewal, let's take time to turn inward and focus on our own time in. All that arises within us as we cultivate and deepen this sense of belonging, restoration, and renewal. As we continue to breathe and enjoy each breath, let's turn our attention toward the rich diversity of people in our lives and our everyday interactions. With that, let's begin to reflect on how we exercise equity, as well as activate and advocate for that equity. Turning our attention to opening our hearts and our minds to the vast intersectionality of our world that cause us to examine things like who holds power across our communities and across facets of society. What is grounded in the ways that we live, work, learn, and play. As we continue to breathe, honoring each breath and the rhythm of our own body, as our attention may wander away, let's gently just bring it back to focusing as we breathe for belonging, our restoration and renewal, exercising equity, and resourcing ourselves so we may activate and advocate. In our collective efforts to advance equity, may we have the courage to take the necessary steps to recognize and value each of our many identities. May we exercise equity through our genuine care and concern for one another, through the ability to share with openness and curiosity, through open invitations to participate, broadening access and opportunity, through collaboration, care, and co-creation with those impacted by systems and communities. Holding those most affected in our hearts and directing this practice towards advancing equity and justice. May we breathe for safety, for ourselves and one another. May we breathe together for justice, for the positive change that we see each day in the march towards social justice. May we honor and nourish the relationships so necessary in advancing equity in our world with deep trust, as this cannot be done alone. Let's continue to enjoy our deep breaths, pausing with ease, and releasing our breath. And let's draw our focus to our vast potential as individuals and community in exercising equity, to activate and advocate, anchoring ourselves in our equity breath as we now turn ourselves to our practice, as we slowly come to our closing. We use our breath as a tool to focus on breathing for belonging, restoration, renewal, exercising equity, activating and advocating, trusting our path, and healing through hope. May we hold ourselves with the utmost compassion. As we move into the last two elements of our equity breath, allowing ourselves to trust our path and allowing ourselves to heal through hope. Let's anchor our awareness on our breath, focusing simply on breathing in and breathing out. Raising our awareness of our body, releasing all of the tension, discomfort, pain, worries, anxieties that arise, releasing it all. Again, breathing in with ease and releasing anything that doesn't serve us in this moment. As we continue to breathe, let's bring our awareness to our hearts, welcoming the tenderness of our hearts, bringing our awareness to our emotions. Again, holding ourselves and each other in deep compassion. Giving ourselves grace. Smiling. Easing and releasing with each breath as we notice and recognize our own suffering. Noticing how it manifests in our body, in our emotions, in our tone, in our energy, in our words, and in our actions. Trying to hold the suffering with deep compassion. Easing suffering with the beautiful power of our breath. As we are aware of our suffering as a pattern in the world, how it manifests around us, visualizing how it affects so many. As we take in this pattern of suffering, let's hold it with abundant compassion, sending ease with each out-breath to one another. As we breathe in and breathe out. As you notice the suffering of others, what arises for you? What are you aware of? What do you feel in your body, your emotions? Let's allow all that is arising to be held with compassion, sending ease and relief to our minds, to our hearts, as we continue to breathe. Let's slowly bring our awareness to our breath, our anchor, our best friend that is with us at all times. As we welcome the ease and the ability to breathe with each in-breath, with each out-breath, let's release any tension that arises. Notice the suffering of those that hold great privilege, recognizing the guilt and even perhaps disconnection. Feel this energy and hold it with deep compassion as we release it with ease and send relief, as we send loving comfort. Returning our awareness to our entire body, our heads, our minds, our hearts, our hands, our feet. From this awareness, let us honor our deepest intentions to address and alleviate suffering, and what we need to do in order to create conditions to thrive. Strengthening ourselves and bringing into awareness the steps that we can take next. How does this feel in your body? How does this feel in your heart? What are you and what are we carrying forth from today? What do we need to do to keep the flames of determination, courage, compassion, and care? How do we allow it to continue to evolve no matter what difficulty or odds arise? As we continue to breathe for belonging, as we continue to restore ourselves, and with each breath, create a sense of renewal. And exercise that welcome pause so we can advance equity together in all that we do. Allowing ourselves to first trust ourselves and our path, so we may activate and advocate. Giving ourselves the much needed space to heal through hope. As we take our last few breaths together, honoring what is arising for you in this moment, honoring the care and the commitment that it entails to be here in community with one another. May we carry ourselves with care and compassion and the grace that we all need to march forward individually and collectively. As we continue to breathe, this great gift of the ability to breathe, as we breathe in, ending our practice in gratitude, and as we breathe out, spreading the sense of both love and gratitude that we have for ourselves, for each other, and all of those that help support us to be here in this moment. As we continue to breathe together and breathe for justice. As we take our last few breaths, feel free to do what your body or mind is calling for, whether that's to stretch or smile or wipe your tears. Give yourself the warm embrace that you need in whatever way that manifests or is best suited for you. Thank you so much for giving me the space and opportunity to be with you all here today. Thank you. It's always a joy to be in community with you all.